It was the time of the judges when the immorality of God's people had gotten so severe that the Bible simply says, and God's people did what was right in their own eyes. There was a spiritual leader God had appointed, Joash, over God's people, but Joash got compromised and God couldn't use him. So God called his son Gideon. Gideon, mighty warrior, and Gideon, so full of doubt because of his father's compromise, that God had to continue to remind him of his identity before he could enter him into his destiny. And once Gideon was ready, God said, there's something you have to do before I can do what I need to do. It is found in a scripture in Judges 6:25. God says, I need you to take your father's bull and second bull, 7 years old, and pull down the altar of Baal, which belongs to your father. And the altar of Baal was a pagan altar. And on that altar of compromise was child sacrifice. In fact, it would be called what we might say full-term abortion. It was an altar of sex trafficking and every kind of perversion. And then he said to Gideon this, I want you to cut down the Asher pole that is besides it. You see, the spiritual leader had been so compromised, his altar became the altar that all of the men in the city rallied around. And the Asher pole is a sexual instrument. And the temple prostitutes would come and perform sexual acts against it while the men would gather around and watch. And then eventually enter into. God could not get one man to lead a revival because they were all around that altar that is today known as pornography. And Gideon, knowing the severity of what he was asked to do, did it at night. And if you know the story, the next day, all of the men of the city said, who cut this down? We need to kill him. Church, today I just want to share with you one of the greatest evils that is facing this country and this church, the church. It's the issue of pornography. It is a raging fire against the men of God and the women of God. It is accelerated to a point in our generation like never before. And its roots go back to this time in history. The stats are clear. This is not just something to think about, intuitively say, yeah, I know that, yeah, those issues are there. Let's just go on to other things. No, this is destroying the church. See, here's the thing. Spiritual leaders have spiritual authority. And what spiritual leaders do in public life manifests physically, but what they do in their private life is released spiritually. And in my own life, I'm one of these statistics some 20 years ago was rescued from this awful thing. Today, 1 in 5 children at the age of 5 is exposed to pornography. The screen shows you 56% of all divorce cases involve one party having obsessive interest in pornographic websites. 57% of our pastors admit they struggle with pornography. 64% of youth pastors. 71% of young adults. It wasn't this way just some 20, 30 years ago. The rage of this increases. And for my own life, like our children today, at 8 years old, I was exposed to the most ravished kind of pornographic images that ravished me. And in my early days, that became a struggle of my life. And then at 35 years old, with my own private struggle and pornography, my pastor fell. And my addiction just raged that much greater. My name is Sam Gallucci. I'm senior pastor of Embrace Church in Oxnard, California. For the last 4 years, I've been on the GOC. Before I became a pastor, I've been in ministry now for 20 years. I was an itinerant, ministering into this realm, helping hundreds and hundreds of men. I had the privilege of writing a follow-on book with Steve Otterburn, who wrote Every Man's Battle. I had a privilege to write a follow-on book, and for 3 years I crisscrossed the western states, calling men, rescuing men from this great deception. I have experienced it as a young child, as a young adult. I've experienced it as a pastor falling and the effects of me. And then when I was rescued, I experienced it again on staff of a big church, of a pastor that fell and ravished the church. And as being a member of the GOC for the last 4 years, what broke my heart over and over was the reports at almost every meeting of another one of our guys or gals falling. And the ravish not only of their family, not only of their life, but of the church. It's time to break down those altars. It's time to rip those Asher poles. It's time to do something that needs to be done to address this issue in our church. God is calling his church to rescue his people. We are all exposed to sexual images. You know that as well as I do. And the shame of it keeps us in this fear and bondage when we know that what's brought into the light heals. We need a proper defensive strategy to maintain our purity. None of us can fight this alone. Pornography threatens the well-being of individuals, relationships, families, communities, and our churches like it is never before. And the deception of it is so great because here's the thing. The devil has power, but he has no authority. Jesus says, all authority comes to me. And Jesus gave us that authority in his name. So the only way the devil gets authority is when we lend him ours, by believing the lies in our life. But today, the missionary church partnering with a great ministry that I've had the privilege to be a part of with Ed Schutte and several members of the GOC MLC that came together, we are announcing a revolutionary ministry that can help us all in our churches fight and protect our churches and rescue our leaders. Take a look at this video.
Hi, I'm Steve Jones, and I'm the president of the family of churches that we call the Missionary Church. I'm here today to talk to you about a real threat to our churches and about a great program that's been developed to deal with that threat. In today's world, sexualized images are everywhere. You cannot flip through a magazine, turn the television on, or open a laptop on your computer without seeing images designed to draw you in and using sexuality to do it. Online, you are tempted to click through to the next thing, and then the next, and then the next, and progressively it gets worse, as this is designed as an attack against us. And none of us are intended to fight this attack or any attack alone. And yet the truth is, most people fight this attack alone. We're all in need of a proper defensive strategy that maintains our purity and keeps us from falling prey to these temptations which are thrown at us. Because the cost of not having a defensive strategy is too great. Pornography doesn't just threaten the well-being of the individual, it threatens the fabric of the community, it threatens the church, and it threatens the witness of that church in its world. And the church is not immune to these threats. In fact, according to a Barna study group, 57% of pastors and 64% of youth pastors nationwide admit that they have struggled with pornography. God is calling His church to rescue the people of God from the deception of pornography. The Missionary Church is excited to announce that it's partnering with Before It Begins, a project designed to address this threat. The Before It Begins project offers two core services. The first one is preventative. Preventative services are designed to equip everyone in the church to effectively respond to this threat before it begins to be a problem. These services include online resources, specialized programs for your church, and even confidential access to personal coaching for our pastors who lead our churches. We encourage, in fact, I personally am asking that every one of our pastors visit the Before It Begins website to learn more and to familiarize yourself with the resources available to you and to take advantage of those preventative resources. The second set of services that is offered by Before It Begins are for pastors who may already be struggling with pornography. As a denomination with well over 500 churches, we understand that some of our pastors may already be struggling privately with pornography. We recognize that these pastors are in a difficult place. Most men would maybe typically go and speak to their pastor about such a thing, but the pastor has no one to turn to, and it can seem as if there is no way out. If he shares this with his elders, with his board, with the people of his church, he fears that he may lose his position, that he may lose his livelihood, his employment, and that he may lose the community of which he is a part. But if these sins are left in the dark, they're more likely to grow into something bigger and more sinister. We've already experienced cases where the pastor's offense has become public, and it has been devastating to the church and to the community and to their witness in the world. If you are a pastor already struggling with pornography, we want you to know that it is not too late for you. The Missionary Church is committed to your restoration. The national and regional leadership team of the Missionary Church, that means the regional directors, that means the people in the national office, and that means the district directors, have all agreed that we would have Before It Begins to be our official and an independent partner to help us battle with this problem. Before It Begins, restorative services offer safe and confidential access to counseling and support for all of our pastoral teams. If you are struggling with pornography in any way, we urge you to contact Before It Begins and find out how they can help. Their services are completely confidential and independent from the Missionary Church. We realize that the only way for this thing to work is for BIB, Before It Begins, to never share your identity with anyone in the Missionary Church. And I give you my word that if you contact them for help, they will never share your identity with any of us in the Missionary Church. Our longing for you is the same longing that you have for yourself, that Christ is glorified, that sin is defeated, and that the Lord can use you for the kingdom purposes for which He made you. God bless you, and thanks for listening.
Wow. What do you think? It's good news. It's God news. It's like the brother that came up and preached this morning. Man, I love what he said. We get the opportunity to let Jesus minister to us. I want to encourage every lead pastor to join us at 4 o'clock today to learn about how you can help protect your church and rescue those in your church that might be struggling. We have a breakout session today at 4 o'clock. It's been changed to the Anthony Room today. It was going to be in here, but it's been changed to that room. We want to invite you to come and join us and let us teach you how you can protect your church. This is a call for all of us to come together. We have a lot to share with you. It's a powerful, new, unique approach. Never really been done before. We do integrate a lot of the very best practices that are in the industry today into what we do, but we've added a piece that I believe is so amazing and creates so much courage and confidence in the love of Jesus, the restoration of Jesus for those that are early in, that are struggling with a complete confidential approach. We want to share that with you and teach you how you can bring this to your churches and help rescue your men and women and how to protect them. So come to our workshop this afternoon. Learn more about our advocate program. If you have men and women in your church that are mature believers that have a heart for this, we're going to introduce what we call an advocate program, where you can, from your church, have somebody that can be an advocate, a man and a woman, that can help not people in your church, but somewhere else in the country, because it's completely confidential. But we have a complete program for that, and on Thursday we'll be doing an orientation about that. Visit our booth out front to get more information. I think we've passed out some flyers all over the room. But we invite you onto this journey. Let's stand together and let's make history together, because we have a great God who loves us and is in the rescue business to set us free for the great work in this generation. Thank you. God bless you. And I hope we see you all at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Thank you.